So first of all, thanking most respected Syed Munawar Ali Shihab Tangal for the inaugural address. Respected CKCT office bearers and the members and the participants of today's session. Since the time constraints are there, we are straight away going to the session. We will have the discussions at the end of the session. So with whole respect and gratitude, let me welcome Bino K. Jose sir for his presentation on NEP 2020 and introduction. Welcome you, sir.
Continue, Bino, sir. Okay.
Munawar Syndicate member, Honorable Chair, Shahina, my brother Sri Ashraf, Sri Rauf, Purnima. The last few days, America searched the word typical in, and the reason was that the lady who is selected as the candidate for vice presidential election in America so it is evident that keeping dear to her heart the Tamil culture. The Tamil culture she has been brought up in, even though she was born on. What I'm trying to say is that a lady who is born and brought up in the USA and is selected by one of the major political parties of the USA to contest one of the most important elections in the country, is holding very much dear to her the culture of her forefathers, not even her childhood, but of her forefathers. How has it come that in her mind and in her life? Evidently, because she was given this culture by her parents, even though she was brought up in the USA. The US society is highly individualistic. And the lady in her very important address to the nation is making a reference to how dearly and how preciously she holds dear to her heart her family values and family itself. That is, education has got two important aspects. That is, it has got an informal aspect, and at the same time, it has got a formal aspect. The education policy of a nation talks about the formal education very much. And of course, the informal education, which is perhaps more important, especially as far as the formation of the character, values, and mindset of the people is concerned, to the family, to the religion, and of course, a very important part of it can be, a very important aspect of it can be done by the formal education as well. For example, in the case of India, all the former national education the constitutional and then, of course, all the values those which are cherished dear by the people of India. in mind here is that what a nation should hold high is embodied in the Constitution itself. So what you are expected to give importance to, or how you are expected to shape the thinking pattern, the mindset, the very culture of the people is very significant. And that is the constitutional value first. Because you are shaping the child, shaping the attitudes of the child. You are forming the mentality, the mindset of the child. Thus, this is why Kothari Commission in its first sentence mentions that the future of India is the destiny of India is being shaped in her classrooms. Of course, when we come to the NEP 2020, it very clearly and beautifully states in its vision statement that, okay, it is a long sentence. Okay, yes. So, it's a very beautiful and long sentence which has got two important aspects. It tells us that the national education policy imagines or it put forwards a vision according to which the citizens of India will be shaped in such a way that they will have two important aspects. One is pride in Indianness, and the other is, of course, a global perspective, a universal citizenship. Is that the education policy wants the Indians of the future two important aspects of their personality. One is a deep pride in Indianness, and the other is universal attitudes. So a beautiful term is also used. You have to go global and local at the same time. Cherishing within you pride in India. You must be competent and, of course, broad enough to accept the challenges which the humanity as a whole face today. Any dissidence against this? Because we all respect such a vision. But practically, what is happening? This is the more important question.
Sir, 1 minute.
First of all, I started by referring to two important components of education, that is informal and formal. The important aspects of the development of the personality which are to be really covered by the informal education are also brought under the purview of this education policy. I believe this is one of the very important aspects of this education policy. It's very much on the shaping of the personality and mindset of the people. That is something which should have been an area of informal education. That is the realm of family, religion, and informal agencies of the society, which should have been more active in shaping this aspect of the personality. That role is also taken by the formal education. Formal education is brought into those spaces also. It's very important because you want to shape a society, you want to shape the human philosophy and mindset in such a way that they are rooted in particular types of perspectives and values. That is the point. And now let us have a quick scan of the important principles on which the higher education or the scenario of higher education is envisioned by this NEP 2020. It includes multidisciplinarity, holistic education. These two terms are very significant. It is something which does not concentrate on intellectual formation alone. See, the formal education, which is facilitated and shaped by the state, is taking much care to make education holistic. It's of course ideal and good. At the same time, it is concerned about every aspect of the formation of attitudes and imaginations of the people. That's also very important. Now, come to the overall positions of the NEP. That is the thing. Now, when you look at pedagogy, important terminology is you have to do away with the rote learning, and you have to give more importance to understanding. Creativity and critical thinking must be encouraged. Ethics, ethical, humanitarian, and constitutional values should be cultivated in nobody can oppose. Of course, they are very good also. In case of
Binu sir.
Advocated,
Binu
life
sir.
skills are to be educated to the children. Continue end semester evaluations. Technical education should be integrated. There should be respect for diversity and respect for the local context. These are all included as important principles of the policy. Equity and inclusion are also given much significance. And then, if you look at synergy in curriculum across all levels of education will be another important pillar of NEP. NEP itself states that teachers will be the heart of the learning process. That very terminology is used. They will be the heart of education policy. But then the control mechanism
I was contacting him. He will come back.
Okay. Am I audible now? Am I audible? Okay. Can you see me? Am I visible?
No, okay, no, okay.
Oh, thank you very much. So let us continue. I was talking about the major principles on which the national education policy is based. Research promotion, I was there. Research will be promoted, and the policy proposes to or promises to increase government expenditure on education as well. So these are the things which we have seen. Now let us look into the practical aspects. I mean, what will it be like if or you can say better, when the policy is completely implemented? First of all, let us see the education system which is envisaged by the NEP 2020. It wants to bring up an education which is quite modern, rooted on ancient Indian values. Here you have some very important issues which you will face. First of all, see, the education system is going to be totally diversified. You will find it very difficult to find common standards for assessment, common standards for evaluation, and even common standards in defining what is to be the input, because you are bringing in a lot of things. Maybe there are references about 64 arts. Then you will be bringing about something like different shapes, painting, and such things. These things can be learned along with the dance, music, mathematics, physics, history, or anything. So how are you going to evaluate, or how are you going to define the achievement of a child, or how are you going to compare those of one with another? How will you convert the achievements in all these areas into certain numbers so that you can make the comparison, make the determinations, decision making a scientific or remember, standardization and the possibility of the use of the language of mathematics is one modernity, and that is going to be very precarious in the new education scenario which is going to emerge out of NEP. Similarly, just imagine the mindset deeply considering nationality, ancient values, and all those things as something of sanctity, unquestioned sanctity. That cannot be a modern mindset, because modern mindset is based on questioning, not on such kind of simply accepting everything as pure or sanctified and such things. Then vocational education is going to be integrated into the mainstream. What will happen? Just imagine a child from an Indian village. Suppose he comes from the family of a particular caste which is engaged in a particular craft. When you have the natural choice of which will be the natural choice of the child? Most probably, or in many situations, it will be their traditional craft. Education, the problem not integration of the vocational education, but rather considering vocational or craft education as equivalent to subjects like mathematics, physics, or English or history. You have a choice. You are completely free to choose between mathematics and dance, or chemistry and carpentry. The result is going to be very different. Remember, all India's modernity and modern achievements are the creations of generations of social reformers in the beginning, and then others who got Western education, and then the values which they imbibed through that. Now, the policy claims to be national education policy. Of course, the term national was very much there from 1964. It was there in the 1986 as well. National policy on education. These two were known as. Now it is national education policy. But which India are you talking about is a more pertinent question. You always claim throughout the report that you want to bring up Indianness and be pride in Indianness, but you always refer to ancient Indian values. And what exactly is this ancient Indian value is itself can be questioned, something which can be questioned. And of course, a very strong public education sector should be built up. There will be MERUs, which are going to be the primes of India, multidisciplinary universities. At the same time, the emphasis is also on the on opening education and making it with equity and inclusiveness. But practically what is happening is privatization to a great extent. See, the education sector of India is going to be at the mercy of the market. And this is not accidental. This is not something which developed all of a sudden. From the 1980s onwards, the public funding of education is discouraged on the basis of the World Bank advice. Education is viewed not as a service but as a commodity. The National Education Policy 2020 advocates PPP, public-private participation. For example, one private school and a public school can be clubbed together so that they can exchange their strengths with each other. What is going to happen, we all can simply imagine. And of course, when there is an accreditation system which is going to be extended to schools as well, see, the schools are going to be analyzed or accredited on the basis of same uniform criteria. Uniform criteria for private schools, public schools, schools in Mumbai, schools in distant villages in Malappuram district, everything. What is the logic? How will that accreditation help? We can just imagine. And then just think about the employment culture. This is one of the most pertinent points I want to emphasize. The employment culture the NEP is trying to bring up is totally dangerous. The performance-based assessment, which is now in force in the higher education sector, is going to be extended to school sector. The result will be lots of recidivism and nothing more. We all know from different examples. And you just imagine a situation in which anyone who desires can open schools. Multinational corporations, corporate investors, NGOs, civil society, charitable or religious organizations, volunteers, even volunteers, those who volunteer, anyone can open schools. That means opening schools is going to be a very easy job. Anyone who wishes to will be able to do so. Privatization at its peak, you can say. That is a situation which is going to come. To bring a few things which are neglected in the policy. They are very important. Often you find what is there. See, Gandhiji, that word is not there. Freedom movement, that is not there. Medieval period, it is not there. And Tamil literature, its richness, it is not there. So Mandarin, the Chinese language is not there. So whatever is obliterated is also very significant. ODL, which is given much significance, will be dehumanizing education. Internationalization, just to bring to your attention, in 2000, United Nations and UNESCO has already told that prestigious universities are offering substandard courses in the developing countries. So I was talking about internationalization. Of course, when you are excited about the international universities, top international universities coming to India, you have to keep in mind the UNESCO report that the international prestigious universities are offering substandard courses in the developing world. And then coming to languages, see, ambiguity is the only thing which remains. There are a lot of contradictions which you can find in the policy stance. For example, no rote learning. They are also going for NTA's imminent role, which includes entrance. When they say entrance should be discouraged, they are establishing or they are giving more role to NTA or entrance test, even for university admission, every college. And then ancient Indian tradition, it is much emphasized. See, in ancient India, there were Gurukulams. Only in early medieval India, there was Nalanda and Takshashila, but you are going to establish large multidisciplinary institutions. Large is always underscored. See, that is again a contradiction. You are talking about mother tongue, but you are also saying wherever possible, leaving room open for all the types of schools and different types of schools and different standards of schools for different sections of the society open. You are negating, or the report is negating 1964 and 86 reports, and at the curbing commercialization while you are all open for privatization. And finally, at the heart of education, you are actually undermining their employment security and everything, even respectability. You will be at the mercy of all the sorts of evaluation. unnecessary associated works rather than teaching. And just look at the 64 arts which are referred to in the Kama Sutra. Singing, playing musical instruments, dancing, painting, these are the things which form making jewelry, skill at nurturing trees. These are cockfighting, quail fights, teaching parrots and myna bird to talk. These are some of the 64 arts of which the report is very much proud. See, if these things are going to be a part of a very important part of our higher education scenario, what is going to happen? That is just symbolic. I would like to stop here. I am very much thankful to all of you for your patient listening, especially when there were technical issues, and I'm open for discussions. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you, Bino sir, for such a kind of critical evaluation of NEP, especially based on the pros and cons of NEP in connection with higher education. Okay. So thank you, Bino sir. Okay, thank you, Bino sir, for your concise and critical evaluation of NEP 2020, basic focus topic, NEP 20, some pros and cons. So respected CKCT state and Malappuram district leaders and participants of the session, good evening once again. It was Mr. Bino P. Jose, Assistant Professor of History, St. Dominic's College, Kanyarapalli, talking to us especially on the topic on the NEP 2020, some props and concerns. And this was the first lecture, first technical session on the 4-day lecture series planned by CKCT Malappuram District Committee. Thank you all for joining us. Bino sir, it was really nice to listen to you, especially you have been focusing on NEP 2020 with special aspects of global as well as local aspects of education, informal and formal aspect, and the research dimensions, inclusion, vocational aspects of education, as well as multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, and modernity and privatization. And yeah, in your lecture, we have time constraints, I know. In your lecture, it is good that you have been focusing on some of the primary facts regarding NEP 2020 in connection with higher education. At the same time, you have been expressing your concerns regarding some of the claims which have been already focused by NEP 2020, saying that it is a national policy. At the same time, which nation are we talking about? Whose India we are talking about is a critical question that has to be brought into the major frame once we are getting into the discussion or a critical discourse on NEP 2020. So thank you, sir, for having such a kind of evaluative discussion as well as discoursing.
In the modern globalized world, sticking to mother tongue is impossible. There is no doubt. And that's a very observation.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Okay.
Would be better for
So there was one question between what does Indianness cover in NEP?
What is? I find it here.
What does Indianness cover in NEP? There was another question.
Indianness. I don't see that question.
Yeah.
What does Indianness cover? Okay.
So it is. What does Indianness cover in NEP? Maybe the questioner thinks that.
What does Indianness mean? It may be. Okay, I can just think about it. Indianness, deep pride in Indianness, it is repeatedly told in the report. What I understand is Indianness means pride in ancient Indian culture. Of course, nobody is against it. I am not. I am very proud about the legacy of the country. But I believe that the legacy of the country is inclusiveness. It is receptiveness. It is diversity. but whether you are going to make it specific that this kind of an Indianness is the real Indianness or the practical Indianness which the rules and regulations and the content is going to bring in or not. There lies the question. So we have to wait. Another important question I see here is, I think now it would be better for everyone to learn Sanskrit. This is the question raised by Danish, OCR Danish. Of course, Sanskrit
Yes,
is
Danish.
a
Sir.
language which has got a very rich knowledge system within it. Of course, we are all proud about it. And we also should remember that Vivekananda, in his famous Chicago address, has said that he is proud about Indian legacy because the Indian legacy is enshrined in Sanskrit language, and the Sanskrit language does not have a word equal to or a word to contain the meaning of exclusion. There is no word in Sanskrit corresponding to the English word exclusion. If you are referring to a Sanskrit about which Swami Vivekananda was proud to be an inheritant of the Sanskrit, then it's all well and good. Otherwise, it's very different.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any other question?
Dear participants, do we have any more questions? Okay. Yes, sir. There is one more query in the chat box.
Okay. That is a very important question. Of course.
Should I read it for you,
Change
sir?
is a necessity. Especially in the 21st century, we need changes. And who told there was no change? We all say that a national education policy is coming up after a long gap of 34 years, of course. But the 1986 policy was considerably modified in 1992. And in 2005, it was further modified. Educational scenario which we have at present is totally different from the education scenario which we have 10 or 12 years or 15 years back. Now it is very different. It's changing. And of course, changes are needed. But you have to keep in mind the social realities of India. You have to keep in mind the great legacy of diversity. You have to keep in mind the economic realities and the real care for all those sections which lag behind. Then the changes will be welcome. Changes are needed. And just like the inauguration alone cannot do it in India now. Private participation is required. But how are you going to make it? See, made it mandatory. It is a legal or it is a constitutional responsibility of the state to provide free and compulsory education to every child within the defined age group. Now it is sought to be extended, but it is not given the given that particular status, RT status. So changes should be there, but that should be keeping in mind the realities. That's it.
Okay, thank you, sir. So there is one more question by Mr. Faisal TK, expressing the concerns regarding the minorities in India, how to affect the rights of minorities in India.
Actually,
No much references regarding the minority rights. Actually, there is no mention about minority rights in the present document. But of course, there is one reference about the minorities, that is to take care of their diversity and all. I think when the rules and regulations are formed, minority rights are not easy to ignore because those are provided by the Constitution. It is not simply assured by Constitution. It is made an essential aspect of the Constitution. There are certain values in the Constitution which cannot be amended according to the Supreme Court of India. The minority rights is such an aspect. It cannot be even amended. So when the government frame rules and regulations, I don't think it will be easy to make the minority rights sidelined. It's not easy. But at the same time, when there is excessive privatization, things will be different. Just imagine a situation in which the education sector, higher education sector especially, will be at the mercy of the private sector. And imagine a situation in which minority interests will not be safeguarded in that sphere. Then things will be different. So it is not going to come directly. It is going to come indirectly. That's the thing. How to be very active and vigilant. That's all. At the same time, nothing to fear or nothing to be scared of. Just to be vigilant and careful. Be responsible citizens. That's all, I think.
Yes.
Just look us.
Okay. We can take only one more question, I think, due to time constraints. There is Dr.
It's
Anil
true,
Kumar
Mr.
was expressing a
Dr.
concern
Anil Kumar.
regarding
It's a
just
good
look at the right of education
observation.
as human
The
being,
thing is that
not as minority or
the
majority.
human beings in India are not all one and the same. You just imagine about the offspring of an upper caste civil service officer born and brought up in Delhi, and compare him with a boy from a very deprived section, son of a farmer or such a person. Of course, the social realities are very important. That is why there are several provisions. And when you look at minority, see, majority or minority should not be as important as human beings. There is no doubt. But you have to give equal reputation and equal social position to every individual just as human beings. We have to sojourn a lot in order to reach in such a situation where human beings will be just human beings. That's the problem.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I think the queries are over, or
I think it is time to wind up.
Will be a okay. GDP.
So, okay, for the time being, I think
GDP
we can
and public
just take one more
investment,
question, which is
those
already
things
mentioned.
are very significant. See, one of the very welcoming promise is that government will keep apart 6% of the GDP for education. But the thing is that this is a promise which is being made ever from 1964 and never realized. At the best, it was 3.1 when it was realized. And ever after 2012, the public spending on education is declining. That is a reality. So this public investment or increase in the or phenomenon or just doubling of the public investment on education is something which is a promise, which is a dream. If it is realized, well and good. But whether it will be realized or is it practical, that is a question. Anything more?
Okay, sir. Thank you. Yeah. I think you have answered all the queries.
Okay, the questions are very interesting and I'm thankful to you.
Thank you for such a patient, elaborate sharing of the ideas, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Sir, okay, so dear participants, as our chief, as our speaker of the day, Mr. Bino P. Joser has rightly mentioned, the policy envisages a kind of shaping of Indian minds and cultivating Indian minds with pride of Indianness, and at the same time, the global qualities. It fails to prove, just like our speaker has been expressing his concern and anxiety, that it may fail to prove to cultivate a mind with capacity to synthesize and with research perspectives as well as critical thinking, perhaps. So that is a point which the speaker was particularly mentioning in his lecture. And at the same time, as he has already mentioned, this seems to be a policy which is curtailing the scope of diversity as well as dangerously producing kind of homogenization in an heterogenized Indian upon the heterogeneous Indian citizens. So that must be a very serious kind of intake that we have to take in, as we have to critically debate throughout in India. So thank you for such a very concise report as well as evaluative address on NEP 2020 based on the props and concerns. Okay, so I'm handing over to the secretary. We have official vote of thanks. So I request all the participants to be online until the end of the session. So over to you, Rob, sir.
District Treasurer Nasr Illat sir will offer the vote of thanks.
Hello, Rob, sir.
Am I audible? Hello?
Hello.
Yes, you are audible. You're audible.
Okay, thank you, Shahina Mol. As a humble member of the CKCT family, I am thrilled to have the first day of our talk series come to a grand end. Now that the NEP has become a law, we are discussing how we can use it positively in the completely strange new context of New India and what are the hidden agenda behind it. We are proud of CKCT for taking this very serious issue with the same seriousness. In this crucial context of India's education history, I would like to say that we all need to study NEP in detail. I do not wish to go into detail on those matters. I am going straight to my duty. We are very happy to have Sayyid Munawwarli Shihab Thangal, the esteemed and enthusiastic youth leader of Kerala, as the special guest to inaugurate today's first day of our talk series. Educated and distinguished by his own vision and educational renaissance initiatives, Tangal spoke to us in some depth about the future of the new NEP. The CKCT District Committee extends its heartfelt thanks to Tangal. The CKCT family would also like to extend their heartfelt thanks to Mr. Binopi Joy sir, who delivered the keynote address on NEP 2020 and introduction. We would like to thank CKCT District Office BS Dr. K. Shahina Mol, the moderator of the event, and all the leaders and dignitaries who attended the event. Thank you all.